Have you ever heard of the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution? Welcome to the Over-Opinionated Pastor. I'm your host, pastor and teacher Jonathan Burris. Today's episode is not for the faint at heart. Grab your big boy pants, buckle up, and hang on, because this is going to be a rough ride. The Equal Rights Amendment passed in 1972, but not enough states ratified it by the 7-year deadline set by Congress. The amendment was first proposed nearly 100 years ago, not long after the passage of the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. Congress did not pass the amendment until 1972, and lawmakers added a poison pill to it by allowing only 7 years to ratify the amendment. But by that time, only 30 of the required 38 states had ratified the Equal Rights Amendment. The deadline was extended to 1982. By then, some states had rescinded their earlier support. The ERA, or Equal Rights Act, or Equal Rights Amendment, is simply worded. Here's what it says. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Well, last month, March 2023, Democratic Rep. Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts and Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland put forth a joint resolution to revisit the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. And now, that great senator from Alaska, Republican Lisa Murkowski, has joined the fight. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has scheduled or is working on a vote this week for a resolution aimed at adding the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution more than a century after it was first introduced in Congress. The bipartisan resolution still has an uphill battle in the House, where it needs the support of several more Republicans in order to reach the supermajority needed to advance the measure. Now, traditionally, the GOP and conservatives have been against the passage of this amendment. And there's a big problem with the Democrats' attempt to push this thing through. On January the 8th, 2020, the Justice Department, yes, that was Trump's Justice Department, undercut efforts to revive the dormant Equal Rights Amendment, finding that an expired pair of deadlines imposed by Congress on ratification of the measure means it's too late for additional states to ratify it now. Now, critics of the Equal Rights Amendment argue that it's unnecessary given the protections bestowed by the 14th Amendment and other more targeted laws like the Equal Pay Act and the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. And almost every argument appearing before the Supreme Court involving either women or the LGBTQIA2+ movement is going to invoke the 14th Amendment in some way or another. And the amendment's seemingly innocuous text would create a slew of new legal problems and will most certainly be used as a kind of a backdoor to legally enshrine abortion rights and LGBTQIA2+ rights into the Constitution. But here's the problem. The term women has been redefined to be subjective and based entirely upon individual self-identification rather than objective characteristics like chromosomes or genitalia. One consequence of the Equal Rights Amendment would be the likely requirement of federal funding for abortions, because at least 2 states have created their own Equal Rights Amendments with language very similar to that of the federal Equal Rights Amendment to require funding of abortion. In the early years of the ERA debate, some people considered these abortion threats to be scare tactics, by the right. But abortion advocates in recent years have freely admitted that they absolutely intend to use the Equal Rights Amendment to litigate such abortion claims, and they believe that such cases would be successful. But it doesn't stop there. This same Equal Rights Amendment would destroy the hope of protecting women's sports from being overrun by biological males. It would certainly be used to fund the trans movement and the transgender surgeries and those types of things. With sex and gender being fluid and based on a spectrum, according to modern-day leftists, this amendment would ensure that nothing is taboo. Now, we have states that are threatening to remove children from the homes of parents who don't affirm their desire to mutilate their bodies. And we've seen the Biden administration not only embrace the chemical castration of young boys, the removal of young ladies' breasts, but also to inject them with a destructive cocktail of hormone therapy, forever destroying their potential for having future lives as God made them. But wait, it gets even worse. President Biden has recently said that kids belong that kids belong to everyone. Your children aren't yours. They're the property of the state. And the day is coming where that's going to be more than just words. We're not on a slippery slope, friends. We're rolling like a snowball down the mountain, and things are turning into an avalanche at a pace that will absolutely destroy everything in its path. Now, we're going to make a most horrific segue as we move to the Netherlands, one of the most gender-affirming countries in the world. And I want to give you this warning. Please pause the video if you're eating. And if you've got children within earshot, you may want to put in some headphones. In the Netherlands, the doctors went in to give an 18-year-old boy a vaginoplasty. That means they made him a fake vagina. Now, normally, brace yourself, they would split the boy's penis in half and invert it and fashion it into a sort of fake female genitalia. But this boy was given hormones and puberty blockers at such a young age that he didn't have much of a developed penis to work with. Instead, they took a piece of his colon for a makeshift vagina. The doctors say the earlier the better when it comes to starting puberty blockers, but it almost always causes this later surgery, which is always encouraged in affirmative care, and it's going to become complicated. Well, this young person died from a deadly strain of E. coli that most likely came from his own intestines, not from the hospital setting, not from dirty instruments, meaning that the more risky vaginoplasty surgery almost certainly caused this boy's fatality. Billboard Chris on Twitter posted images of this poor boy's infection as it ate his flesh. And there are graphic photos. And the only reason I would even remotely suggest that anyone looking at them would be to strengthen your resolve against such horrific procedures. This is the stuff that horror movies are made of. And under the Equal Rights Amendment, these things would spread throughout America's youth at an even faster rate than it is taking place already. And it would be paid for by taxpayer dollars, with no state and no parent being able to prevent someone from these modern day mangalas who carry out these vicious experiments on America's youth. And if you think America is going under now, wait until this passes. And all this begs one simple question: where are the millstones?